Creating a new broadcast. All right. Hey guys, I think we're live. Just gotta go to my channel here and double check. Da, da, da. View your channel. Live. Great. All right, we're live. So Tim Walz and excuse me, Kamala. There we go. I still have a little trouble with that. Are about to be interviewed live on CNN for the first time. And this is going to be a big moment based on how much rancor we've heard from the right about how Kamala Harris needs to be out there doing all these interviews and whatnot, and how doing an interview is that's something they've been hitting her on, that she hasn't done an interview. So that's all going to be put to bed here in about 4 minutes time. That's going to be put to bed. So we're going to go over here and check out what's going down on CNN. We got a commercial right now, but yeah, big moment here. Very exciting. I'm very excited to hear some policy, some in-depth policy. We've heard a lot of rah-rah speeches, and she's been doing great at those. Um, she's been doing phenomenal at the rah-rah speeches. Uh, and she did phenomenal at the DNC speech, but it was a little bit light on the policy, and we haven't quite dove into some of the nitty gritty of Harris's policy and what that kind of might entail. So we're about to hear it here. I hope, if CNN does their due diligence, I hope that they're able to get into, for instance, no tax on tips. What does that mean exactly, right? What's the details of that? What's Harris's plan for Medicaid and Medicare? Does she support Medicare for all? Does Harris support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Does Harris support codifying Roe v. Wade into law? These are all things that she's going to have a big chance here to kind of nail down and kind of let the American people know what's up. And the right has been, one of their maybe only valid criticisms has been that Harris has chosen not to do a big interview. They felt that they had the momentum. They felt that they had the moment back when Biden dropped out of the race, and they were basically able to capture the kind of lightning in a bottle out of nowhere, and really bolster the Democrats in the election. We're gonna see if she's able to really quell the criticism of her not doing a interview, but probably not, because they're gonna probably come up with something else to attack her on even after she does this interview. But let's go ahead and check out CNN here.
More you do them and get in this pace, it makes you a sharper candidate. It'll make her better for the debate, and it will take away this really, actually, frankly, strong and fair attack line that she hasn't been as accessible.
And she could do interviews with local outlets in these battleground states. There are lots of ways to do it, but I quite agree that if you turn it
There you
into
go,
a
guys.
remarkable event. then you actually raise the stakes for yourself. I also, I fundamentally challenge the idea that these things are minefields.
Let me know how the
navigated.
audio is.
They are also opportunities to burnish your message. And the third thing is,
which, by the way, is what Donald Trump uses them for. I mean, for him, they are opportunities to burnish his message. It doesn't matter what questions you're asking him.
Yep.
He will answer whatever he wants.
They're often as collateral damage along the way. But he does not shy away from them. And I think, that is part of the test of running for president. There are lots of different, you can't just do one thing. Every time you do something well, and she's done everything very well, the bar gets raised, and you have to keep clearing the bar. Obviously, the debate is one of the biggest bars, and that's coming up.
I'm most interested in what she says about Biden. I mean, to me, her answering for this administration, the one that she's in, the one that she casts votes up in the Senate to promote its agenda, that is number.
Getting some lag, I think. Let me see if I can.
Two, I'm wondering if she has any comments about when she knew Joe Biden was on a downhill decline, because we didn't find that out until late, but I suspect she may have known it sooner.
I think that Donald Trump does this thing of she's weak, and then when she proves herself,
It's a little
she's
laggy,
nasty.
guys.
And so there's this really fine line that women candidates
Audio low.
unfortunately have to
Here.
walk, and I think she's done it really well to date.
Yeah, everyone, thank you. Appreciate the conversation. Right now, Dana Bash's exclusive interview with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
Is that better?
Tonight from Battleground, Georgia, a watershed moment in the 2024 campaign, and you will see it only here on CNN. Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris and Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz.
Hello. Hi. Hi. How are you?
Tonight, the new Democratic ticket in their first interview. People might be surprised to hear
Let me
that you
refresh
have
real
never
quick, guys.
interacted with him.
It's lagging a little bit, but it's not starting up yet, so we're good.
Convention images.
There we go.
It's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
With just days until early voting begins, a defining moment in the race for the White House. CNN's exclusive interview of the Democratic nominees starts now.
Here we go.
Good evening. We're live from Savannah, Georgia. I'm Dana Bash, and this is a state very much up for grabs. In between a whirlwind series of stops, I sat down with the Democratic candidate for president and her running mate today at Kim's Cafe here in Savannah. Inside,
Dang, guys.
nothing
it's
was
never
off
lagged
the
like
table,
this.
and you will see our interview in
Trip there this year for me.
a surprise nominee for president.
Give me 1 second. Let me switch over here to a different stream. Give me 1 second. Not sure what's going on there. CNN. All right. Let's get this going again.
Years of planning coming together in a matter of weeks.
Tim Walz!
I'll just keep refreshing it.
After a historic nomination at the convention in Chicago,
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
the Harris-Walz ticket is now pushing forward with the shortest presidential campaign in modern history.
What did you hear from
Take it off
voters
full
here?
screen.
People are very optimistic.
We joined them on the trail as they visited the battleground of Georgia.
Gotcha.
Just 68 days from the election. Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for sitting down with me and bringing the bus. The bus tour is well underway here in Georgia. You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
There we go. Great.
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class.
Yes.
When I look at
Yes.
the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and in an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda, too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things that the vice president's proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by a third. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this.
There we go.
Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
You talked about, you call it the opportunity economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability.
Everyone, be sure to like this stream and subscribe to the channel.
Specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality. What we need to do to extend the child tax credit to help young families be able to take care of their children in their most formative years. What we need to do to bring down the cost of housing. My proposal includes what would be a tax credit of $25,000 for first-time home buyers, so they can just have enough to put a down payment on a home, which is part of the American dream and their aspiration, but do it in a way that allows them to actually get on the path to achieving that goal and that dream.
So you have been vice president for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
The steps that you're talking about now, why haven't you done them already?
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Never happened. We did it. So now, as I travel in the state of Georgia and around our country, the number of seniors that have benefited. I was in Nevada recently, a grandmother who showed me her receipts. And before we capped the cost of insulin for seniors at $35 a month, she was paying hundreds of dollars, up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that anymore.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work. There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
Wow.
In 2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What made you change that position at the time?
Well, let's be clear. My values have not changed. I believe it is very important that we take seriously what we must do to guard against what is a clear crisis in terms of the climate. And to do that, we can do what we have accomplished thus far. The Inflation Reduction Act, what we have done to invest, by my calculation, over probably $1 trillion over the next 10 years, investing in a clean energy economy. What we've already done, creating over 300,000 new clean energy jobs. That tells me, from my experience as vice president, we can do it without banning fracking. In fact, Dana, I cast the tie-breaking vote that actually increased leases for fracking as vice president. So I'm very clear about where I stand.
And was there some policy or scientific data that you saw that you said, oh, okay, I get it now?
What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay. Another issue, big one, is immigration. As vice president, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration in southern countries and
northern part of Central America.
The northern part of Central America that affects the southern border of the U.S. During the Biden-Harris administration, there were record numbers of illegal border crossings. Why did the Biden-Harris administration wait 3.5 years to implement sweeping asylum restrictions?
Well, first of all, the root causes work that I did as vice president, that I was asked to do by the president, has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region. The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which is the border. And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted which we supported, which I support, and Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border, and because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill. A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill. And I'm sure in large part because they knew they were working around the clock, and 1,500 more agents would help them. That bill would have allowed us to increase seizures of fentanyl. Ask any community in America that has been devastated by fentanyl what passing that bill would have done to address their concern and a pain that they've experienced.
So you would push that legislation again. I just want to ask
Not only push it, I will make sure that it comes to my desk and I would sign it.
Just one other question about something that you said in 2019 when you first ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
Generally speaking, how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal. I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. And 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone. I believe it is important to build consensus, and it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you
Strong
had a lot
answer.
of Republican
Very
speakers
strong.
at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican
Right
to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone
Yes,
in mind?
I would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
That was just the start of our wide-ranging conversation, and we have some never-before-shared details about the phone call that changed everything between President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Ooh.
I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
Ah.
And her running mate. I asked him about some of the controversies that have sprung up since Harris put him on the ticket.
Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Wow. All right, guys, that's the first break. Wow, they're still going to be hitting walls on this stolen valor stuff, even after this whole Arlington cemetery debacle that Trump has found himself in. Wow, those are some really, really strong responses from Harris. She seemed a little bit tense, a little bit defensive, a little on edge at the start there, and then she kind of loosened up and she got into explaining some of her policy, what her and Biden have done to attempt to secure the border, something the Republicans continually have been hitting the left on for years now. And she aptly pointed out that, in fact, the Democrats proposed a bill that would have made the border, would have lowered border crossings on a daily basis. And the Republicans blocked it because Trump wanted to run on the border. That was a very strong moment. She talked about the Biden's administration's success in lowering the cost of prescription drugs. She talked about $25,000 for first-time homeowner down payment. I'm not sure if that's a loan or money given by the government. Somehow, she talked about extending the child tax credit. She talked about that she's not going to ban fracking and investing in a clean energy economy. That was strong. I wanted to hear about the minimum wage, which hopefully we're going to be able to get a chance to, have more of these interviews and whatnot. Obviously, there's a few more policy things there I wanted to hear. Maybe they'll get into it. I'm not exactly sure how long this is going. I think probably 1 hour. So we still got about 40 minutes here of the interview. I like how Tim Walz is just like, he's just kind of like there. He's just like going along with everything, like backing her up. And it's like, it's basically been Dana versus Harris so far. So yeah, we're gonna see what they're gonna get into. We're gonna hear obviously about Ukraine. We're gonna hear about Palestine and Israel, and we're probably gonna hear her hit Trump. Maybe about this Arlington controversy. I'm not sure exactly when this was recorded, but I think that we still have quite a bit of that to go in this interview here. I'm checking here to see. I got my eyes peeled on the stream to see whenever it comes back. We'll go right back. I thought another strong moment that she had was citing the realness of the climate crisis. Let's be real. The climate, extreme weather in this country, one way or the other, has gotten way worse. And we're back.
Trump on a debate stage in Philadelphia. And when I say meet, I mean literally meet. Would you believe they have never talked face to face? The only time they've even been in the same room was when Harris was a senator watching Trump's State of the Union address. Now it's Trump watching Harris on the campaign trail with money and momentum behind her and making her case directly to voters.
As voters are getting to know Kamala Harris, they want answers on how she will make their lives better. She heard that here at Sandfly Barbecue in Savannah.
What we're going to do to increase access to capital for small businesses, I'll be rolling out next week. Part of what we're going to be doing in terms of a tax credit.
On the trail, she talks about her experience, years in the courtroom as a district attorney and eventually California's attorney general. She wants to reframe the contest as the prosecutor versus the felon.
I know Donald Trump's type. I've been dealing with them my whole career.
The former president is turning to a well-defined playbook of personal attacks.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
And in just 12 days, the nominees will meet face-to-face for the first time.
She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
If you got something to say,
How's the audio, guys? Good?
I want to ask you about your opponent, Donald Trump. I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any
same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Let's talk about some foreign policy issues that would be on your plate if you become commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months, along with you. Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I am unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change. But let's take a step back. October 7, 1,200 people were massacred. Many young people who were simply attending a music festival. Women were horribly raped. As I said then, I say today, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. And we have got to get a deal done. We were in Doha. We have to get a deal done. This war must end.
In the meantime,
and we must get a deal that is about getting the hostages out. I've met with the families of the American hostages. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at the significance of this to the families, to the people who are living in that region, a deal is not only the right thing to do to end this war, but will unlock so much of what must happen next. I remain committed
need some mods,
since
guys.
I've been on October 8 to what we must do to work toward a two-state solution, where Israel is secure and in equal measure, the Palestinians have security and self-determination and dignity.
Governor Walz, the country is just starting to get to know you. I want to ask you a question about how you've described your service in the National Guard. You said that you carried weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war. Yeah. Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog. I'm not going to do that. And the one thing I'll never do is I'll never demean another member's service in any way. I never have, and I never will.
I just one other question, because again, this is all new.
Yeah.
This was not, however many days ago, this was not on either of your bingo cards, especially yours. You had to clarify that you had said that you and your wife used IVF, but it turned out you used a different kind of fertility in order to have children. And then when you ran for Congress in 2006, your campaign repeatedly made false statements about a 1995 arrest for drunk and reckless driving. What do you say to voters who aren't sure whether they can take you at your word?
Well, I've been very public. I think they can see my students come out, former folks I've served with, and they vouch for me. I certainly own my mistakes when I make them. The one thing I'll tell you is I wished in this country wouldn't have to do this. I spoke about our infertility issues because it's hell, and families know this. And I spoke about the treatments that were available to us that had those beautiful children there. That's quite a contrast in folks that are trying to take those rights away from us. And so I think people know who I am. They know that record. They've seen that. I've taught thousands of students. I've been out there. And I won't apologize for speaking passionately, whether it's guns in schools or protecting of reproductive rights. The contrast could not be clearer between what we're running against. The vice president's position on this has been clear. And I think most Americans get it if you've been through that. I don't think they're cutting hairs on IVF or IUI. I think what they're cutting hairs on is an abortion ban and the ability to be able to deny families the chance to have a beautiful child.
Up next, the moment that changed everything when Kamala Harris got a phone call from President Biden that he was dropping out of the race.
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces.
Speaking of those baby nieces, the vice president also opens up about a viral picture from the convention that meant so much to so many. And Tim Walz talks about that convention moment with his son that brought many viewers to tears.
You were speaking, the camera caught him. So incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, that's my dad.
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that.
Oh, sweet. Touching and heartbreaking, and not heartbreaking, heartwarming. Yeah, so far so good. I liked Walz's responses there. Not too much policy there. They were kind of getting into, pretty typical stuff of defend your record on this and defend your record on that. Whenever somebody's nominated to become vice president or president, every single little thing about your life gets put under this microscope for all of America to see. So honestly, I'm not even totally up to speed about all that stuff that they were talking about. Walz's wife's fertility, and not even up to speed on all that. But I thought that the way Harris just so flippantly dismissed Trump's race attacks and said Trump's race attacks are, she said it was a same old tired playbook, or a page out of the same old tired playbook, or something like that. Next question. Next question. What's there to say? It's just so silly. It's so off the wall and silly to attack Harris on her race. She also said that she supports Israel's right to defend itself, but also how they do so matters, and that her number one priority is to get a deal to get hostages out. But Dana Bash pushed her. Does that mean a change in an arms deal with Israel? And she said, no, she kind of said, no, we need to get a deal to get the hostages out. So basically, nothing new there on her stance on Israel Gaza, which has basically been to support Israel, but at the same time acknowledge that there's definitely been instances of Israel going way too far with what they're doing. Which I think is basically like, that's the most kind of level-headed kind of balance you can possibly strike in this tricky issue. Didn't have anything written down about that Walz stuff, but we're gonna see what she has to say about Biden. Apparently, the day of, that historic day when Biden dropped out of the race, some sort of phone call that was made. That should be interesting. I think, this is basically what we all expected from this, right? It's nothing too groundbreaking. It's not really going to probably swing anybody one way or the other, which for Harris at this point in the race is a good thing. We're back.
It's hard to believe it was just 39 days ago President Biden shocked the world via tweet. That's how we found out he was dropping his re-election bid. But before he tweeted the news, Biden called his vice president, and for the phone call, and exactly what Kamala Harris was doing when she answered. But we started this discussion with the moment that set all of this in motion, CNN's presidential debate, and whether President Biden was strong enough to lead this nation again.
Vice President Harris, you were a very staunch defender of President Biden's capacity to serve another 4 years. Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
No, not at all. Not at all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He is so smart and loyal to the American people. And I have spent hours upon hours with him, be it in the Oval Office or the Situation Room. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that. And so, one, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped, I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
Because we haven't had a chance to talk, I'm just curious, staying on President Biden, when he called you and said he was pulling out of the race, what was that like? And did he offer to endorse you right away, or did you ask for it?
It was a Sunday, so here, I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
Go.
my family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces. And we had just had pancakes and, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, "I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you."
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about him, to be honest.
Wow.
I think history is going to show a number of things about Joe Biden's presidency. I think history is going to show that in so many ways it was transformative, be it on what we have accomplished around finally investing in America's infrastructure, investing in new economies, in new industries, what we have done to bring our allies back together and have confidence in who we are as America and grow that alliance, what we have done to stand true to our principles, including the one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I think history is going to show not only has Joe Biden led an administration that has achieved those extraordinary successes,
Yes.
but the character of the man
Yes.
is one that he has been in his life and career,
Better than
including
Donald
as a
Trump's
president,
character.
quite selfless and puts the American people first.
A passionate defense of the man who chose her to be his running mate 4 years ago. 4 years later, Harris made a choice of her own. And with Governor Walz's rise to national prominence, a star was born at the convention, Gus Walz. We'll hear about that moment between father and son and the woman who could make history in the Oval Office on this iconic photo.
Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
The TV.
Wow. So, yeah, I'll tell you guys, as a photographer, getting a picture like that, that's like a once in a lifetime type of photo. So that was an interesting little tidbit there about her, chilling with her family, eating pancakes, sitting down to have some food and do a puzzle together with her family and receive that call. That kind of shows how uninvolved she was and how really during that time, that fateful historic day when Biden decided to drop out, there was so much up in the air. There were so many different ways that things kind of could have gone. And I remember there's this little period where it was Biden dropped out of the race. He announced he was going to drop out. And then it wasn't until I think 25 or 30 minutes afterwards that he ended up endorsing Harris officially. And during that time period, it was like, the craziest 20, 30 minutes in modern Democratic Party history, certainly. So Harris was just as wrapped up in all of that, and Harris's whole day and the whole world really was flipped on its head, just like it was for a lot of us out there following this election, following this race. Let's see. Yeah, that was a pretty short segment there. I feel like they're gonna end it here at 8 o'clock. I'm not sure if any of you guys know or not. Love your recaps, Susan. Thanks, Susan. Appreciate that. Let's look at some of the chat here. Dude, put on a hat or something. Are you saying that because of my very stylish band-aid I got on my boo-boo on my head? 25 minutes later, Kenyon D says, okay, yeah. 25 minutes later. I mean, that was a crazy time. Nobody knew. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew, where the party was headed, whether or not, there was going to be a contested convention. But it all really so quickly, the party coalesced around Harris, which, there's a saying that the Democrats fall in love and the Republicans fall in line, right? That's kind of been how it's been historically. And for once, the Democrats fell in line, right? All at once for Harris, which was something that was very, very shocking to see, especially because Biden didn't give any signs really that he was dropping out until he decided he was dropping out, right? It was up until the very moment Karine Jean-Pierre and his whole administration was adamant that he was staying in. So that was something that made it shocking. We're back.
Listened to some experts, a big name, a prominent leader from a swing state, Pennsylvania or Arizona. But it is a little-known guy outside of his home state, where Minnesota nice is a source of pride. But behind all of that folksy humor and flannel, Tim Walz is far from just being Mr. Nice Guy when it comes to needling Donald Trump.
Governor, you obviously have spoken to voters all over your state for years.
Yeah.
What are you learning in a place like Georgia?
We're seeing explosion in small business growth. The one thing is workforce and child care, because workers have to have child care.
Campaigning with Tim Walz,
Don't do it.
finding his role in this historic campaign.
Would you be my running mate and let's get this thing on the road?
I would be honored, Madam Vice President.
After bursting onto the national stage with this word.
These guys are just weird.
Known as a folksy father of two from rural America, now a running mate who is not holding back.
Listen to
You
the
said
guy.
the
He's
weird
talking
word.
about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind.
And finding his own rhythm with his new boss.
What'd you order? Brisket and greens and mac and cheese.
What about you?
I had the brisket and coleslaw on this.
And what about the spice situation, the Tabasco? What's happening with that?
I'm going to let him speak for himself.
The Vice President's growing peppers at her residence, so she's trying to bring me along on this. Minnesotans.
It's okay.
I'm getting there.
It's all good. You just do you.
I just have to ask you both about two standout moments, aside, of course, from the addresses that you both gave, but standout moments that were perhaps unexpected during the convention. You mentioned one of them, Governor. A moment that you shared, that the world shared with your son, Gus. You were speaking, the camera caught him, so incredibly proud of you, so emotional, saying, "That's my dad."
Yeah, I don't know as a father I could have ever imagined that. I'm grateful for so many reasons to be on this ticket, but that moment, to understand what was really important, to have my son feel a sense of pride in me, that I was trying to do the right thing. And it was, you try and protect your kids, it brings notoriety and things, but it was just such a visceral, emotional moment that I'm grateful I got to experience it, and I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of Hope. I'm proud of Gwen. She's a wonderful mother, and these are great kids. And I think the one thing is, talking about the era we're in, is our politics can be better. It can be different. We can show some of these things, and we can have families involved in this. And I hope that there was I hope people felt that out there, and I hope they hug their kids a little tighter, because you just never know, and life can be kind of hard.
And last question, Madam Vice President, the photograph that has gone viral. You were speaking, one of your grandnieces that you were just talking about was watching you accept the nomination. You didn't explicitly talk about gender or race in your speech, but it obviously means a lot to a lot of people, and that viral picture really says it. What does it mean to you?
You know, I am running because I believe that I am the best person to do this job at this moment, for all Americans, regardless of race and gender. But I did see that photograph, and I was deeply touched by it. And you're right, it's the back of her head, her two little braids, and then I'm in the front of the photograph, obviously speaking. And it's very humbling. It's very humbling in many ways.
Did she talk to you about it afterwards?
Oh, she had a lot to talk about. She had a lot. She listened to everything, and she listens to everything.
Give you your hot takes?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Madam Vice President, Governor Walz, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you.
This was Vice President Harris's first real unscripted setting where voters could see and hear her explain some of.
Wow, so I guess that's pretty much it, guys. I thought it was going to go until the top of the hour there. I guess they're going to do some analysis here. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for stopping by. If you liked the stream, please be sure to subscribe to my channel. I upload daily videos about the 2024 election. I am totally committed to doing every single thing that I can personally do to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the next president and vice president of the United States of America. I think that Donald Trump's vision for this country is something that is unattainable. It's unattainable for anyone out there who is struggling to pay for groceries, to get health care, to find a better job. It's just the Republican Party just hasn't done anything good for the common person out there in a really long time, since before Reagan's day. Really, when you look at it, what they're doing is they're taking rights away from people in this country, right? Not adding more or building this country up, but stripping things away that we've already had in place, right? They've done that with Roe v. Wade successfully. They want to do that with a whole bunch of other things, right? Including Obamacare, right? They tried like a million times to take that away. And if Donald Trump is elected and the Republicans take a majority in the Senate and in the Congress, they will, make no qualms about this. It's laid out all there in Project 2025, which y'all can say you don't want anything to do with it, or that it has nothing, you have nothing to do with it as much as you want. But Trump's campaign manager, in fact, was one of the authors of it. It lays out in there very succinctly, very clearly, that the Republicans want to change gay marriage rights in this country, right? That's one of the first things that they're going to do. Overturn Obergefell, right? If we think it's bad with Roe being overturned, let's just wait until Donald Trump and the Republicans take control of the government again. So I'm jazzed up. Whatever is happening next in the world of politics, I will stream it for sure for you guys here. Let's go ahead and here, let's jump into some of this analysis here on CNN. Why not?
we deem most valuable to voters, when this is a campaign that is actually making a mark in an interesting way, reaching out to people directly.
But Assad, you have also spent a couple of times now interviewing her. What did you make of how she handled it? I mean, to David's point, a little bit more comfortable now than she has been in the past.
Yeah, I think there's been a consistent story of growth. She's been in more of these settings. I think we saw that somewhat tonight. I also think to the question about how policy positions have changed, they were clearly ready with an answer about how the values have been consistent. For me, one of the lines that stuck out was, this is a new, I think people are ready for a new way forward. She said that a couple times. It goes to David's point. I don't think there's a policy separation that they've created with Biden. Obviously, she gave a kind of personal defense of him, but they're also very clearly trying to position her as a change candidate in the same way that Donald Trump is positioning himself as a change candidate. In some ways, it feels as if that's going to be the crux of what this comes down to in November, is whether that is bought by the electorate or not.
And interestingly, there is some polling to suggest that it's a battle right now. It's actually a live ball.
It seems that that's where this might live and die, but I think it's really interesting because for someone who doesn't want to talk about race and gender, who doesn't want to kind of put that identity forward, it is allowing her to make the case of change without kind of saying those words. And so I thought that was really in the air of this speech. But to the point about normal versus weird, the future versus past dichotomy that they're trying to create, I think they landed that tonight. I think they want to present them as a package that is relatable to people and that is someone you feel familiar, whose story is familiar, whose message is familiar and relatable. And I think that's something that she's grown in, and we saw that this evening.
Interesting. Ashley.
So I think I would break this down into 3 parts: values, vision, and her voice. And I think she made it very clear that she is still committed to her values, to be an American, to be a prosecutor, even though she may have changed on some positions. And she clearly outlined where she had changed. I think on the vision, she attempted to draw the contrast without talking about Donald Trump, but still being very clear and not berating her current boss, actually. And when you think about the opposite ticket of J.D. Vance, where Donald Trump's vice president isn't even on the ticket anymore, we don't need to go down why that is the case, but she was clearly able to draw her vision for how she wants to take the country forward with her opportunity economy, and then her voice. I think so many Americans want to know, who is she and does she have command of her voice? And she answered every question. Now, you might not like the way she answered them, but she answered them as a capable, qualified leader. And I do think she moved the ball forward a little bit. You know, maybe she didn't score a touchdown tonight, but she definitely moved down the field.
All right, Scott.
I agree with Assad about this idea of the question of who's going to change will be the fundamental defining question of the election. And I was sort of watching this, you know, holistically. What is she saying? What does she look like? What's on the screen? So at the beginning, when she's talking about Biden and their record, our screen said, this is called the Chiron, the headline at the bottom, it said, Harris stands by Biden administration economic record. She is making it clear that she will embrace
the interview's
and be
over.
a continuation of Biden's economic policy, his record, what they've done. She offered no remorse, no regrets, no introspection about anything they've done. She continued to blame inflation on this fantasy price gouging idea. She had no additional thoughts on the economic situation in the country or what they've done beyond just saying, Joe Biden and I have done a great job. Now, if I were the Trump people, I would be salivating over the idea that that's how they are going to run the race. I don't believe it's tenable. I also thought it was interesting that she didn't take any responsibility at the end for telling the American people that Joe Biden was fine and he was strong. I mean, we all know that's not true. That's why he's out of the race, and she's still standing by the idea.
If you want to watch the interview, you can rewind the stream and watch it that way. Guys, if anyone volunteers to be a moderator, I'm definitely going to be streaming whatever we get next. That's big. The CNN and MSNBC and these different mainstream media channels are they're kind of waking up and smelling the coffee all at once, and they're relaxing some of the like taking down of people's streams of using their content, because they realize basically it's basically free advertising for them. So the debate, I think it's September 15th. 15th or the 9th, I gotta look that up here. I will definitely stream that. If anybody volunteers, say to more, be a mod. Okay, I'll make you a mod. And I'll just kind of trust people with this. Alyssa, I did like a million times. Oh, you did? Okay. Sorry, yeah, I haven't really been watching the chat too carefully. Just because it was going so fast, and an interview, a little disappointing on the length there, and a little bit disappointing on some of the depth of it, but basically it's not really gonna affect the race one way or the other, right? It's not, we're like, look, with Biden, like, and I say this as a wholehearted Biden supporter, okay? Wholehearted. You guys can go back and watch my videos I was making over a year ago, supporting Biden 100%. And I'll say this, that just about nearly every single time Biden was to get trotted out to do a speech or what have you, you were always nervous for the moment, the gaffe, the mess up, and that would be hyper focused on, right? And with Harris, we basically we don't have that anymore. We don't have that potential of having a moment that is able to be hyper fixated on and just blasted over the right-wing propaganda channels is so much lower with Harris, and it's already helped the Democrats' chances of winning this race. And I'll tell you guys, I watched that debate live, like many of you probably did, and I was drunk. I was pretty drunk, pretty crossfaded, but I was also totally sick to my stomach, and not because of the booze. I can hold my shit. I'm not a lightweight. I was very nervous, and Biden came out and basically confirmed exactly why I was nervous, and I was there going, "Oh my God." But for once, the Democrats woke up and smelled the coffee, and they made the right decision for once. But let's go back to some CNN here. Let's see if it's interesting at all. Yeah, I'm gonna try something here real quick. Give me just a minute. I'm gonna try to lower the resolution. Settings. Picture in picture. Wonder if I can lower the resolution. Here.
Comfort and ease that we saw play out today.
Okay, let's not be mistaken. I mean, Donald Trump is tall and very loud.
Yes.
And he is very persistent. It's not going to be so easy to just say, okay, let's move on. He's going to be right there.
Yes, but I think you have to play your game. We've been talking about moving the ball down the field. It's like you are on offense.
And everybody, I want to take this opportunity, everybody here, vote, whether or not you volunteer or donate, or the best way to get involved is to vote.
Actually, that behavior is below the office of the president.
I think she answered the right way, but there was another element to it that I think in a debate is going to be very important. That behavior of Donald Trump's really does raise the question do you want this for the next 4 years, or do you want someone who's focused on your problems? I think that pivot works.
I think that's true for the debate. I think for tonight, I think she got that part exactly right.
Yeah.
That's what I would have counseled.
And you guys have underscored one of the bigger differences I've seen between her approach to this versus Biden, which is that she focuses very much on saying, I acknowledge that this economy doesn't feel good to you. You know, there's like a shift in tone. And similarly with Trump, it's much more, we saw this during the convention, undermining him and making him seem small. As she said, go small, rather than the epic bully that Biden had talked about.
I think that's because she talked about the economy had crashed under Donald Trump because of COVID, and nobody could anticipate that that was going to happen, and that they did work to recover, and that there is still more work to be done. And I think that acknowledgement of
what she doesn't say is actually the data is really good if you look at the GDP.
That's right, because nobody cares
about hearing the first 2 years.
But I didn't. I'll disagree with you on that, on the walkbacks a little bit. I just think it's jarring to go through the progression. You wanted to ban fracking. Yes. Now you don't. Yes. And why is that? Well, my values haven't changed. I mean, that progression to me must sound disorienting to the people in Pennsylvania.
Actually, let me play that sound just so people who may have missed it. This is what she said.
Here it is, guys.
Generally speaking,
on fracking,
how should voters look at some of the changes that you've made, that you've explained some of here in your policy? Is it because you have more experience now and you've learned more about the information? Is it because you were running for president in a Democratic primary? And should they feel comfortable and confident that what you're saying now is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important and most significant aspect of my policy perspective and decisions is my values have not changed. You mentioned the Green New Deal.
Green New Deal.
I have always believed, and I have worked on it, that the climate crisis is real, that it is an urgent matter to which we should apply metrics that include holding ourselves to deadlines around time. We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the illegal passage of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed.
My values have not changed. I mean, actually, interestingly, as I listened to that soundbite, I was thinking to myself, well, this will be a test of whether the left is willing to kind of be in a pragmatic space, because she's basically saying, you know, I believe in climate change, but let's put aside fracking for a second and do other things instead.
I think what she is doing is saying that climate is a crisis, and we have one side, maybe not you, Scott, but that have people who deny climate change and don't want to address it. But there are many ways to get to solutions. And so when she talked about it, she didn't do it when she was vice president, so it shouldn't be disorienting for voters to say that she won't do it when she's president. She also talked about that there are many ways to get to where we want to get to, and that there's ways to measure it. And so she talks about the things that she had to, which is not banning fracking. I think that she answered that question very well. I also don't think that the progressive left, particularly those who care about climate, will balk at that issue. Maybe they will. They're not a monolith. But because Joe Biden has been one of the best presidents in our history on climate. So it is a yes and that's what you have to do when you're president.
The other thing, Scott, is she is not running against the Lord Almighty. She is running against Donald Trump, who himself has had a lot of position changes over the last many years.
Well, that's certainly what she wants to do, and what Trump wants to make this into is she's running to continue Biden. I mean, you're setting up the framing correctly. She wants to make it a referendum on Trump. He wants to make it a referendum on Biden. Look, I think the 2 biggest issues coming out of Biden for her are the economic policies, which she clearly wants to embrace, but also the immigration policies. Dana asked her if she had anything to say about what they did for 3.5 years leading up until the back and forth this year. Completely sidestepped it, did not answer it. She goes back to her time as Attorney General. But again, absolutely nothing, no responsibility, no reflection at all on the day one executive actions or anything else they did for 3.5 years or anything she said in her previous campaign, which was to have the most permissive immigration structure. She's trying to skip a block of time at the debate. Trump cannot allow it.
Yeah. I'm intrigued in this for completely different reasons, which is that we've seen the Democratic Party, in a way, move further to the right on the issue of immigration. I think prior to this point, there was a lot of concern about it being a humanitarian crisis, talking about putting children in cages. It was drawing a delineation between these big bads who are harming families and us who will be different. Now you have a candidate who's basically saying, actually, the thing I'm going to sign on day one is the thing we wrote together with Republicans to make them happy. And that's fascinating, right? It's a completely different position for the party to be in.
And you're doing some deep work on her.
Good
you
point.
did some deep work on her. I did a podcast with her when she just came to the Senate. My sense is that's who she is. I mean, I think she's a pragmatic politician. I think she's progressive in her thinking, but a pragmatic progressive.
The debate
which
is
September
September 10th, guys.
Was, to be
well,
honest.
also because Biden did reverse some policies, but he kept others. It's not a very obvious thing to look
what
at.
I thought was
Mark your
missing,
calendars.
she explained her position on immigration. One of the questions was, you said, like she did with many things in 2020, that you don't believe it's a crime to cross the border if you do so illegally.
Star
and
Mountain,
her
for real,
position
Star
now
Mountain.
is we should enforce the laws. She doesn't explain the delta between those two things.
Those months, they weren't 20. It wasn't 2020. It was 2019 because she never made it to 2020.
That's right. That's right.
And the reason she didn't make it to 2020 was she was taking a bunch of positions that were the state-of-the-art political advice that did not really reflect what she felt comfortable with. And she
Volume
did
up the video. Okay.
She is not. This is different from my values. I think there's something more than my values.
I don't think so. I think my values are that there needs to be a pathway for
Come on,
people
Abby.
to come to this
Control
country
it,
that
Abby.
is legal. And for decades, politicians have failed to deliver that
better?
for
I added
people.
some
And so
game.
her values is there needs to be a pathway. I will come and I will compromise. I will compromise with Republicans. It won't be that Donald Trump will compromise with Democrats.
Democrats have changed their values on immigration.
But
from 4 years ago.
wait, let me just finish this on this. Okay, the other thing that she talked about is that she did acknowledge, I know you want to call her the border czar, but what she really was tasked with doing was talking about the root causes. And when you look at the migration patterns from the Northern Triangle that are now crossing the borders, those numbers are down. Is the problem solved? By no means.
You said she was, in 2019, that she was taking the state-of-the-art political advice, and that's why she did what she did. Wouldn't that bother, if you didn't know anything about this person who wanted to be the president, wouldn't it bother you to know that they might have certain instincts or values, but they're willing to set those aside as long as the political consultants come in and tell you something?
I guess my answer to you is I would take some solace in the fact that they have values and principles and that they're not entirely transactional. And that is a distinction with the candidate she is running against.
Not on immigration.
But even that was that was a good. He's a marketer and he throws ideas out and he sees what lights up the crowd and then he goes all. And that's how the wall came about. But Ashley, I want to say one thing about what you said. You asked, would progressives stick with her? You gave sort of the progressive interpretation of what you heard. What I think she's saying is that any immigration policy has to include as part of it, not in order to mollify Republicans, but as a matter of public policy, has to include strong enforceable borders. I don't think that's a concession on her part. I think that's what she actually believes.
Progressives have already taken a lot for this moment. I think the question of whether they stick with her has already been asked and answered, to be honest. She's changed enough positions, and folks have really supported even within that. But I would say, from my voter perspective or talking to folks about how they're making these decisions, it's not as if it is. It's not as if no one gets that Kamala Harris has changed positions from then to now. It's that the change in the positions doesn't feel as drastic as the person she's across from. So it is up to Donald Trump to make a substantive-based argument about why this matters in a way we have not seen him do or seen the ability for him to do in that time. So I guess it's like, if this was happening in isolation, I do think it would be fair to ask Harris what has changed between now and then. I remember asking her this when I interviewed her in 2019 on criminal justice reform, because a lot of the things that she concluded in her plan to run for president are things she did not support as Attorney General. And I remember saying, what has changed? And there was an answer that was something, about the politics has somewhat changed. And that wasn't the language specifically, I don't want to say that, but it was the winds have kind of changed. I think that's happening from then to now also. And they're trying to make that values consistency. I don't think that's a bad argument. I think people have a sense of understanding of those values. But to your point, it sounds like politics, and people have a willingness to accept a level of politics.
There is a
from these folks.
baseline acknowledgement.
Because Donald Trump has done that 10 times over.
The other point that you made is that this is about Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. And if Scott Jennings were standing up against Kamala Harris, we might be having a different conversation, but it's actually Donald Trump.
On that front, I have an announcement to make.
It'll be someone else.
I knew this was coming.
And I'll be his vice president.
Yeah, go for it. Everyone, stick around for us. We've got a lot more coming up. Dana Bash will be here back to talk about her exclusive interview with the vice president and Governor Walz. And we're going to pull back the curtain on what will go down as a fateful day for Democrats and a phone call that changed history.
It was a Sunday, so here I'll give you a little too much information.
Go for it. There's no such thing, Madam Vice President.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces.
CNN News Night.
Let's go over to Fox News and see what they're saying. Let's see how long I can withstand this. But it's always interesting to see. Oh, it's Gutfeld.
There and shut everybody up. Listen, I understand. I worked at Arby's for 6 minutes.
Yeah.
No, I did. I showed up 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
Late, and they were like, "Yo, you're late," and I was like, "Oh."
Okay, never mind. They're not talking about anything. Not anything remotely relevant going on over there on Gutfeld right now. It seems like it's a bunch of nonsense. Who was that guy? Do we know who that? Does anyone in chat know who that was? In Fox. Wow. Okay. Gutfeld's just so not funny. He's so not funny. I'm sorry. Are there any conservatives out there that really think that Gutfeld is funny? I don't know if there are. Hey guys, everyone, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to catch the next debate. I'll be streaming it here live. It's coming up here soon, September 10th. Mark your calendars. That is coming up here, September 10th. That is a Tuesday. So that's going to be pretty ferocious. What to expect from that debate, I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows. It'll be must-watch TV, that's for sure. If anybody will be swayed one way or the other from that debate, who knows? But I think that Harris is definitely, I mean, that performance Biden gave at the last debate, how could you not clear that bar, right? It was not good. It was so bad, in fact, that he ended up getting removed completely from the damn ticket because everyone was like, oh shit, right? We can't run Biden. Even though I think that Biden's record ultimately is strong, and Harris is in the position that she was in because of a lot of work that Biden has done, right? It's just that Biden couldn't overcome this perception of his age being a liability and his ability to get the job done. And whether or not his age was or is actually in the way of him getting his job done, I don't think so. I think Biden is perfectly healthy and does do the job. But perception becomes reality, right? Especially in politics. Perception is reality in politics. People are going into the poll basing their decision based on their version of reality. So the version of reality that the overwhelming majority of the party came to after watching Biden debate on CNN was that he was unable to continue doing the job. Excuse me. So that's really what did it in for him. And I don't think it was anything to do with his administration or his policy or, you know, or Afghanistan or anything like that. I mean, Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, right? Trump said he was going to get out of Afghanistan and sign the Doha agreements in 2017 and did not adhere to them. So Biden had the balls to do what the previous 3 presidents before him didn't have the balls to do, and that was withdraw from Afghanistan, and then the puppet government immediately collapses, which everyone was predicting was going to happen, because it was never a government in the first place. So, you know, that's the number one thing that y'all criticize him on. Like, you know, Biden's record is strong, but we're back here on CNN. Here we go. Nope.
And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And
there's that moment.
And he told me what he had decided to do. And
when he dropped out.
I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
And what about the endorsement? Did you ask for it?
He was very clear that he was going to support me.
So when he called to tell you, he said, "I'm pulling out of the race and I'm going to support you."
Well, my first thought was not about me, to be honest with you. My first thought was about him.
Okay.
To be honest.
Let's bring in Dana Bash. She's in Savannah, Georgia, where this interview took place. Dana, that is very, very interesting. And for those of us who lived through that weekend in a lot of different ways, she found out that morning and she asked him, "Are you sure?" That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. First of all, I just want to say that I wasn't sure what she was going to say and what she would offer, if anything, about that conversation, which was obviously private, but it was also historic, which is clearly why she wanted to get some of it on the record for, you know, for history now, because it's going to come out probably eventually. But are you sure? You're exactly right. That kind of moment where, look, it wasn't as if it was a surprise in the instant that it happened. A lot of people weren't sure that the president was going to finally decide, you know what, I'm out of here. But obviously we remember the pressure was mounting. We do know that from our reporting that just in case, she was not doing anything, but just in case some of the people who are in the Kamala Harris orbit were just kind of getting everything ready just in case it happened. But that was a human moment. You know, this is a man who took her out of the United States Senate, made her his running mate. She made history with that. And he was giving her some pretty big news about himself. And then, of course, it was off to the races for her to try to do something even more historic, to be the president, but also just with regard to the campaign process, to scramble to secure the nomination, which wasn't really, if you remember, Abby, it wasn't really set in stone that she was going to get it as quickly as she did. Yeah. We weren't sure what the process was, but she sewed it up in about 24 hours. I also just want to say that just that human element there of what she was doing, you know this, you've covered her, and I know a lot of people at the table. She loves the Sunday dinner. She loves to cook. Being there in the morning with her family, making them bacon, about to do a puzzle. It was just kind of the picture of it all.
It's certainly not what you would
It's
expect.
really stunning.
It's not what you would expect if somebody were, say, expecting big news that weekend, having the
that
grandnieces over, going about your morning. I mean, it really was, despite all of the talk around it. She was continuing on, and you know this as well as I do. When you talk to people around her, that was the sort of mentality that came from the top down in Harris world, was that they were going to be blinders on moving forward. And in that moment, that is exactly what she was doing.
Yeah, it was. And she was very careful. You know, we've heard Republicans say, oh, it was, well, the former president, it was a coup and she threw him overboard. That is not what happened. There were some Democrats who wanted him to go. She personally, I know from your reporting, my reporting, everybody else, she was being very, very cautious and very respectful of Joe Biden to let him make his decision in his own way, in his own time.
All right, Dana, stay with us because we'll be back with you shortly for more from this great interview. But I want to bring it into the panel here. The word loyalty is something I heard from people in Harris world about how she approached what was happening with Joe Biden. But I know, Scott, I mean, obviously we've been talking about this on this show a lot because I know that you feel very strongly that maybe she should have, in your view, been more honest. I want to play what she told Dana about that question of what did you tell the American people about what Joe Biden was like as president, and was it the truth?
Right after the debate, you insisted that President Biden is extraordinarily strong. Given where we are now, do you have any regrets about what you told the American people?
Thank you so much.
No,
Walz.
not at all.
Appreciate
Not
you
at
guys.
all. I have served with President Biden for almost 4 years now, and I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest honors of my career, truly. He cares so deeply about the American people. He has the intelligence, the commitment, and the judgment and disposition that I think the American people rightly deserve in their president. By contrast, the former president has none of that.
It was a carefully worded answer, but one that really was very careful not to even in the slightest way undermine President Biden.
Yeah, I sort of simultaneously admire the loyalty, actually, because it would be tempting to just say, you know what, this was ridiculous, and he made it. But she didn't. But at the same time, you know, before he got out of the race, upwards of 90% of the American people thought he was too old to run again, and she was out there in the face of that saying, no, he's fine. She's still saying that. And no one really believes it. So I guess the real fundamental question is, are people going to give her the grace on that and say, well, she's got to say that because it's her boss? Or
give her the credit for having grace.
Right.
Which is, I think,
that's the point that she
one
was
footnote that we're not talking about, and
Wow,
maybe
what
it's
a
not relevant,
concept.
but obviously there's so much about how she is where she is, in part because of her friendship with the late Beau Biden. There was a real friendship there. There is some respect there, and I think it did affect the relationship that she has with Joe Biden. I don't think that loyalty is perfunctory because there is a personal connection there.
And even when a year or two ago, when people were speculating about whether Joe Biden should throw Kamala Harris off the ticket, that loyalty played a key role in the reason why Biden was very tuned all of that stuff out. She has been like this since the day she was selected and made a very clear decision that this is how she was going to see the role of president. And I think that served her and her relationship with Biden, who feels like that's how he treated that role. I think it informed her decision for Tim Walz, who kind of said that he would be a similarly deferential figure.
People
But
saying
it's not just this
2024, that's
interpersonal
okay.
stuff. I mean,
I'm fine
it's
with
also
that.
on the policy.
Yes.
I mean, Dana asked her, you've said Bidenomics is a success.
It's only hateful speech. I agree
She
with
said
that.
effectively, yes, she talked about prescription drug
You can
prices.
say-
She
you can
talked
say
about
that. You can say
manufacturing
Trump
jobs.
2024.
She talked about bringing down child poverty. She didn't back away from even the idea of
And you know what?
Bidenomics.
I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, please.
No, if you ask the American people about any of those things, they would give those things high marks. The problem that the president got into is he was personalizing all of this, and any criticism of the economy he took as a personal affront to him. He thought shepherding the economy through this disaster was one of his achievements, and those points were achievements. What she did in this interview that he never did was say all those things are true, and yet people were feeling the effects of costs, and that's something we have to redouble our efforts to address. That is the right way to answer the question.
I agree. That's why I let you go first. No, I totally agree. I just want to say one thing on the loyalty and the vice president. I'll sound like a broken record. I don't think that's the fight you want to pick with this ticket. When you look
I'm not picking any fights.
Are you not?
No.
I just don't think it's something that you need to double down on.
I'm not the one here. I'm not number here. I'm not picking fights.
Okay. Well, I don't think Donald Trump wants to pick that fight when we look about what happened to his last vice president. I think there is a constant contrast that we owe it to the American people to remind them of, is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were loyal. I remember at the night he spoke, she went up and said, I love you. Like, it's real, and that's not what we can talk.
It is such an important point, because I think sometimes we get caught up in the spin.
Yeah, let's get
the
to
spin
1,000,
that this was
guys.
a coup does not make any sense, because Joe Biden himself made the decision to step aside, A, and B, that the two of them still apparently maintain a very good relationship. We saw it on full display. What was it? A week ago?
Well, her involvement in it may have been more minimal, but there were people pushing him out. Let's be
It feels bizarre to still be talking about something weeks ago, and on the debate stage, is that how you want to spend
No, this is no. It's economy and food.
But you know something? There's a level at which this presidential politics works that is nonlinear, that is not all about paint to dot kind of policy discussions. It's about who is this person?
Yes.
What is their character? And in that sense, and that's why I said at the beginning of this discussion, I was actually impressed by the way she talked about the president, because it reflected character. And I think people want character in their president. They may not be thinking they're going to find it in Donald Trump.
All right,
No
Ashley,
shit.
Scott, and Ested, thank you all for being here. Everyone else, don't go anywhere. A lot more ahead. Coming up next, Governor Walz responds to the continuing questions about his military record.
My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do.
Every weekday morning.
Yeah, I think that ultimately Walz, this whole thing about Walz's record, it just really, it's really exemplifying how the Republicans right now in this moment in time are just kind of throwing stuff at the walls to see what sticks, because they really had invested a lot of energy and time. And think about it. All right, let's do this for a second. Let's put ourselves in the Republicans' shoes. Right. Let's say that we invested all this energy, all this time into attacking Biden, laying out this plan of attack for how Biden's going to be taken down, and going after his age. And you had a plan, and the Democrats, they oversold themselves on Biden's, on hoping that Biden was as egomaniacal and short-sighted and power hungry as Trump. And he wasn't that. He made the right decision and dropped out. He looked at the writing on the wall, and now the rug got pulled out under the whole race. And what we've seen is a Republican Party that was really, really feeling itself after the RNC. They were really feeling good about their election chances. And given some of the polls and given that debate performance, as I was talking about earlier with Biden, they had a lot of reasons to. But a lot of that's changed. We're in a different universe now compared to before that, like just 30 days ago, a different political universe. So now what we're seeing is attacks against Gus Walz for getting emotional at the DNC, and attacks against a former military, a guy who served in the military in his service. And it seems like they're more than ever flailing, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And to me, it's a sign that we have them on their heels. We have them on the run, Republicans. All you Republicans in here. We have you on the run, and we know it. And you guys, deep, deep down, you know it. And that's why these attacks, these baseless, policyless, just attacks that have no basis in making anyone's life better or improving anything in this country. People see right through it, and people are fed up with it. People don't want what Donald Trump has to offer. The overwhelming majority of people in our country do not want what Donald Trump has to offer. That's the truth. That's the truth. The only way the Republicans win is by dividing people, restricting people's right to vote, gerrymandering districts to make it so that black voters and different voters that are determined to be not as of political value to them are left out of participating in elections. This is how they hold on to power. It's not by uniting people, not by you bringing anybody together or presenting a better vision for this country. They win by dividing and slandering and lying, right? So I expect that we'll continue to see that. Here we go.
Actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in schools and around guns. So I think people know me. They know who I am. They know where my heart is.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct.
I just want to remind you, here are those 2018 comments that Republicans have been highlighting. Listen.
I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army, and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
And I carried in war is the operative part there. Again, Tim Walz was never in combat, but he did serve in the National Guard for 24 years. Let's bring in Dana Bash again. She's in Savannah, Georgia, where this interview took place. Dana, an important exchange on an issue that has been dogging him since he became the vice presidential nominee.
Yes, no question about it. And look, this is such a different process than any campaign goes through to pick the running mate. There usually is a pretty substantial vetting process. I don't know if the Harris campaign, the baby campaign that it was at the time, knew about these comments. My suspicion is no, because I think they used it in some early videos. But it's the kind of thing that you want to kind of be buttoned up about and not take weeks to kind of clean up. It is the first interview that he has done, so it's the first chance he has gotten to try to clean it up, aside from that spokesperson from the campaign that I was talking about. But it's the kind of broader question of who is this guy, and the way that they put him out there at the beginning of when he was picked and also at the convention is kind of who he is. He is a coach, he is a father, and that's definitely the kind of person they would have put out there. They're talking less about him as a veteran. He has a tremendous record as a veteran, and he is somebody who served, and, you know, a lot of people say he should be thanked for it, and I'm not here to disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the 24 years are 24 years. So that speaks for itself. The question is now whether voters will care about the other part of this. Dana, thank you very much for all of this great interview, and for joining us.
Thanks, Abby.
For
Thanks
the
for having me.
post-game. And joining our panel here, Sharon Michael Singleton, Jamal Simmons, and Maggie Haberman. Maggie, this is a core part of what the Trump campaign has been spending a lot of their time on.
I'm sorry, I have to interject. 24 year, Abby Phillips here goes, I wonder if that's what voters are going to be focusing on, or the other aspects. So let's vote for, instead of Tim Walz, because Tim Walz didn't go to Afghanistan or whatever, let's vote for somebody who claimed he had bone spurts to dodge the Vietnam draft. Like, yeah, that's a much better alternative, right? Like, come on.
Vice president. So, I think they are frustrated in part because there were so many attacks on J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance had a rough time in that first week out after the RNC. And I think a lot of this is about that, frankly.
Thank you, sister.
I have seen little sign that voters care much about this. Again, they are voting for the person who is running for president, not the number two, which is also true with Trump and J.D. Vance.
Yeah. And look, we see that in the numbers. I mean, J.D. Vance has really taken a hit in his unfavorables.
No question.
But Jamal, just real talk, though, why not just say you misspoke?
Well,
that was a little surprising.
He did say, I own my mistakes. He did say that in his answer. I own my mistakes. So I think he went on to talk about, put them into some context. Here's the reality. I think, as Maggie was just saying, people aren't really judging this. When I was in the vice president's office, people spent a lot of time going after Kamala Harris on the Republican side. Turns out, didn't really make much of a difference, right? As soon as she launched as a presidential candidate, nobody seemed to remember what happened before when she was a vice presidential candidate. The thing that struck me the most when I was watching that, she said something that was very Kamala Harris. She started talking about the opportunity economy. She started talking about investing in families. And when she did that, she said, so that people can buy car seats, clothes, cribs. It was very specific. This is the way that when she goes out and she campaigns with the American people, she talks to them not just about the big policy, but about the way that they interact with that policy in their own specific lives.
Sharon Michael, what do you make of that? Walz, by the way, was at this interview in a way that is not atypical for, a post-convention interview, but what did you make of it?
I don't think it really matters whether or not he was there or not. I know some conservatives have attempted to make a big deal about this. You're right. Most voters don't care about the number two. They care about the number one.
Ooh.
But I do think there's a possibility for this to become an issue. He could have just said, look, I misspoke. It happens all the time in politics in the heat of the moment. I think most people would understand that, but that's not what he said. He said, my record speaks for itself. Well, does it? We don't know what your record is. Maybe if you're in your home state, people may know, but not the American people. Then he said, well, I wear my emotions on my chest. Well, that showcases some level of instability, not stability. Then he said, well, people know me. Again, no, we don't know you. That's why you're doing this interview. Then he said, well, my wife said my grammar sometimes isn't always correct. Those were terrible answers. And so you're literally making an issue that should really be a non-issue, potentially an issue, by the way he responded, when he simply could have said, look, I misspoke. I apologize. Let's move on to something else. And he didn't.
As is often the case, the VP nominee is the person that the ticket has the less experience than the other person. And so you get issues like this that come up. Everyone, hold on. We've got much more to discuss ahead. Coming up next, Vice President Harris says that she's made her position on fracking very clear. CNN's Daniel Dale will be here to fact check that.
Yeah, I hear that point. I hear that point. They're going to keep attacking about this no matter what. And I say, let them. I say, the more that the Republicans talk about stuff like transgender, stuff like Walz's stolen valor, stuff like who's going in which bathroom, stuff like which books are being read in which schools, in which libraries. The more they do that, the more it provides an opportunity for the Harris-Walz campaign to paint a distinction of, look at what those guys are doing and look at what we're doing. Here's our vision. We're going to yada, yada, yada. Do a whole bunch of things that help your life. Here, let's go look for some MSNBC. And Abby Phillips, that was funny. He's like, a guy was like, I know some Republicans have tried to make a big deal out of this, and Abby Phillips like sneered at that guy. I don't know if you guys noticed that. That was a sneer from Abby Phillips. MSNBC Live. Commercials there too. Okay, that's all right. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. If you guys want to catch the next stream and my next video that I'm gonna be uploading tomorrow, please be sure to subscribe to the Blue Wave. We're gonna be covering election news from here on out until the election, after the election, into the inauguration, into the first 100 days, and beyond that. So thanks everyone again for coming again tonight. It was a big influx of people. That was pretty exciting. It was fun to watch the interview with you guys and break it down, give you my thoughts, and have you guys interact with the chat, you know, in real time. It was a real good time. So yeah, catch you guys on the flip. Whatever's going down, I'll be sure to stream it here, and be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch whatever videos I'm uploading about the 2024 election. All right, it's been a great night, everybody. Thanks again for coming. All right, peace.